Welcome back, my man. How are you?
Man, I'm good. Good. Enjoying the holidays here. How are you doing?
Nice. A little busy, but doing okay. It's just been a Monday, but you know how. Hey, you got to have bad days to remind you that you're having a good day, right?
Yeah, and they don't last. It's all temporary, so that shit could change in a minute.
Yeah.
I got my car stuck in the mud this morning at 5:30, and fucking changed my whole plans on what I was doing. But here we are, and the sun's shining, so here we are. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, dude. Well, I had a rough night's sleep, which never is a good thing to start a Monday morning. And then Poe didn't eat, so that got me a little flustered. I'm running around. I was moving some liquid in the truck. Everything was fine. Went to the job, and it wouldn't work. No matter what I did, it wouldn't pump. I couldn't get it primed. I was fighting it, yanking on 1-inch hoses. I mean, it was just brutal, like for an hour and a half, to the point where my arms are shaking because they're so tired. But this was before I even did what I had to do.
Yeah.
Oh God, man. So yeah, that was my day today, and literally got back here 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, I mean, those pumps can kick our ass. I've cracked up so many times watching them kick the crew's ass. But, you didn't drop the ball. The machinery did. It's always worse when it's you who dropped the ball. So
well, the craziest part was it was working great here.
Yeah.
There's no difference between here and a job half an hour away.
Oh, my gosh.
So an old buddy of mine used to call them gremlins. He goes, Leighton, that's what we call a gremlin. Because everything was fine, and all of a sudden it isn't fine.
Yeah.
But how did it transition from fine to not fine? Gremlins.
Man, that's life in the world, right? Life in the world.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome back, my friend. I think we're going to actually delve a little bit into the reason I had you on the show in the first place. Because we got lost in the weeds last time. So where do you want to start? Why don't you give us a little background about your experience with JDOM, natural farming, Korean natural farming, whatever you want to call it, and the work that you do.
Okay. So I got introduced to EM Bokashi practice first.
Okay.
And, which is basically the same thing. I don't know how much we know about the history of EM, but when Dr. Higa came up with the formula, the first thing he did was took it to the indigenous communities of Japan and Korea, and he had them run it because the KNF stuff is so similar to the EM Bokashi. So he figured if they could run it and authenticate it, then it was a good product. And that's exactly what happened. The natural farmers of those areas took EM and they used it alongside with their KNF products, and they told Dr. Higa, good formula. So for me, I learned EM first, and then working at a cannabis farm, I was hearing all these other things happening with fermentation and the original style of this kind of farming, the Korean natural farming and the natural farming practice. One of the guys who worked at the farm was teaching the classes, and he went to all of Chris Trump's deals. And as we worked on the farm together, we would discuss the practices he had ready to go, and I would discuss what I had. And we realized how similar these things were. So together, we started to make new brews and consortiums by adding the EM to his KNF preps, and just a whole new thing had broke out. Now, what's interesting is back then, learning, especially in cannabis, learning about EM and Bokashi and Korean natural farming, there wasn't a lot of people around, so I got super excited when other people were fermenting. But this wasn't the case as it developed. It seemed like either people were doing Jadam, then they started to almost argue with KNF guys all the time, and then the EM guys had their battle that they were getting beat up by the Elaine Ingham students because of the anaerobic microbes. So there's all these things that were happening, but in my mind, I was just pumped that people were doing similar practices of fermentation, and there was a group of people that were looking at it under the microscope, but everything seemed to get broken apart. But my practice, I never separated them. So when I would do my fermented plant extracts, as we do in natural farming, I would just extend my EM, just like I would extend EM 1 to 1 to 20. I would do that, but then add my biomass in which I wanted to extract. So in this case, it would be mint and chilies. I would make like a bug spray, and then I would need to make EM. So I was able to make my EM, but this one was specifically for foliage because it had the mint for my mint plants, and it had the capsaicums for my chili. So I would work on that. That would be the leaf stuff. And then it hit me like, man, why don't I drop some of my kelps in here, like a little bit of kelp in my 1 to 1 to 20 EM extension. So we put like 10% of the kelp, ferment that up, and realize, oh man, everything's bioavailable now. Now when I use my EM, I have an EM that's made for vegetative state because I fermented my fish with my EM in that extension. Or I have my backwandos for my flowering state. So for me, I've always combined them both because I would collect pieces of the puzzle that worked best for my situation. And that's how I evolved over 20 years. So I've always felt like they're both great and entry points for different areas, whether it's EM or natural farming. It depends on who you're working with, but they're just amazing and they should never be separated. And I think the more that it's almost like karate fighting, you do taekwondo, I do jiu-jitsu. But the reality is, like, all of these little techniques that you can pick up from the farming practices, you can merge them together. And those who like the microscope can look at that for verification. But for us, when we started, our verification of how these things were doing was directly related to how the plant was doing, directly related how the cannabinoid test came out. Once we had that going, then we knew, now we know those are metabolite, secondary metabolite functions. But when we were brewing these things, we knew we were on point because these scores would increase. But then that's where I think the microscope comes in handy, because then you can like come in and maybe take a look at what's happening there. But we were always evolved this thing off intuition, off listening to how to work with the materials that you have, because the technique is really given to us to reduce costs, and the reduction of the waste material in each area is going to be different. But looking at its nutritional value and how that relates directly to the plant in the stage of growth is really, really what I think we should think more about.
So let's pull it back a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about EM on its own. So my understanding is it's, I believe, a bacillus, and then either a non-purple or a purple sulfur bacteria. And I forget what the third element is, or the third organism.
Lactic acid bacteria, and it is a purple non-sulfur bacteria.
Purple salt, non-sulfur.
Yeah, those are like the three main, but it has up to 80 different other kinds of microbes within those class ranges.
Okay.
So yeah, when Higa came up with the formula, he was looking for one specific microbe, since he was hired by a pharmaceutical company to find the silver bullet that was going to make organic farms grow best. Everyone knew things were going to change organically and regeneratively 25 years ago. So pharmaceutical companies wanted to find that silver bullet. They hired him to look for it. And every time he thought he had it in the microscope, he would put it in together with other things and it wouldn't perform the same. So he got very frustrated, would dump these consortia out of the back door of the lab with failure. Every time he did a test, he became suicidal. He wanted to really find this thing. And he said one day in his way out the door, thinking about how he was going to kill himself, he looked down on the ground and there was a big patch of grass growing, greener than anywhere. And that's exactly where he's been dumping all of the failed products that he'd been testing. So it hit him. Shit, we always look at things either anaerobic or aerobic. Let me put them together and see how they behave. He goes back into the lab, puts them together, and sees how they were self-sustaining, self-supporting. And it wasn't one in isolation, but them together. And he knew what was going to be cracking now with the pharmaceutical companies, and learning the lesson of the microorganism in symbiotic relationship through the microscope. He learned that he needed to take this thing to the community, as a non own as a for the community, for the public.
Open
so that's why
source.
it's so cheap. If it was pharmaceutically owned, we'd be paying 10 times the amount for the thing, you know.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, so since he's kept the technology, and like I said, he ran it back through the indigenous community, which is something we don't do in science. Once we find something, we go out and sell it right away. But what he did, he put the brakes on it and said, let me give it back to these intuition people. See how they feel about it. If they feel like this is a go, then it's a go. And they, man, thumbs up. They loved what he did. They loved what he put together. And now it's all around the world. So it's a good representation of science working with indigenous community to come up with what we have today, EM.
Yeah, and another thing I really love about it is that, you know, he basically explains to you how to expand it. So buy it once and expand it for the rest of your life. You don't, this isn't a product that you completely have to repurchase every so often, which is huge.
100%. Yeah, so, man, mine's over 20. And I just been rocking it for, as I told you, a long time. Yeah.
So it's essentially only 2 organisms. For whatever reason, I thought it was 3. Thought it was bacillus.
It is 3. Yeast, lactobacillus.
Oh, yeast. Yeast is the other one.
Yeast is the other one. Yeah, it's the beer yeast.
Mm-hmm. You have the fungal component. You've got the aerobic and the bacillus, and you have the anaerobic and the non-purple or purple? Purple?
Non-purple.
Non-purple. So you have the
purple non-sulfur bacteria. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Same one they use to make Swiss cheese.
Yep. So this goes back to the Winogradsky column, which is basically showing you the difference between anaerobic and aerobic environments and all of the points in between. And so he basically covered that understanding of providing, you know, all of the organisms, which, you know, it goes back to something you said earlier about all the communities battling each other. And that has driven me nuts since I first got involved with the cannabis community, is because, you know, everybody has their camp. It's like, oh, you got to be in my camp. Like it's natural farming. It's, there you go. Love that guy's work. If you can blow up the image, it's kind of cool. While we're talking, Ken, if you can't, no worries. But yeah, that was something that drove me nuts, and to a point where I actually got Chris Trump in a lane in the same vehicle at the same time, just so that nobody could say something without the other one present. Because I wanted to explain to her, like I tried to explain to her that no, you can add sugars, you can stabilize IMO without drastically affecting the aerobic environment. You can definitely ferment, which is an anaerobic process, and still have viable biology. And, you know, when I talked to her alone, she would say, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. But then when I had Chris, and Chris would say the same thing. Oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. This is thousands of years old technology. So the only way to get those two to communicate was to lock them in the same car for 2.5 hours, coming out of San Francisco all the way up to Humboldt for, I forget which regenerative conference this one was. But it was amazing. Once they finally got in the same car and started communicating about the intricacies, it became less of a, oh, no, you can't do that. And it's, oh, I didn't realize the dilution ratio. Oh, I didn't understand how and why you're doing these various fermentation processes. And so, you know, it just goes to show you, though, that seems to be the only way. And even to this day, you know, I'll have conversations with people who are all about Jadam or all about natural farming, and they're natural farming. Oh, Jadam's cheating. You know, that's not the right way to do it. And the opposite is true, you know, the other way around. Hey, guys, can we calm down here? Sorry about that.
No worries.
But anyway, so, you know, I'm glad that you were able to bridge that a lot easier than I was, you know, because it was, again, you were fortunately in a community where people were a little bit more open-minded and less like fixed or fixated on theirs is the only way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you'll find a group of people, and this is what's better. The more we have working at this level where we're trying to uncover it together and not like to uncover it to beat someone over the head with it. You know what I mean? Then you could really advance what we don't know. And this is how I really come across with Matt Powers, is he was a big friend, a long time with Elaine Ingham, and she hated EM. And the more Matt would learn about EM, he had more questions about it. And then he would ask me a ton of questions about EM, which wasn't supporting what he was learning from Elaine Ingham's school. And finally, you see what he's done about discussing and understanding EM at a different level, but that's from the Elaine Ingham side of things. And it wasn't until 2 years ago at our Future, when he had Elaine Ingham on there, where she finally said EM is good, and it was recorded on tape, but for a long time she would always talk bad about it, and then finally she said yeah, it's good. So you can see we're like, okay, we're getting where we need to be, and we're saying the linguistics that are needed to advance soil science, but we need to do this more together in community, because when we're doing it in community, man, it's exciting. You're constantly playing with brews. You're constantly helping other people try different things, and then that cuts the time down on learning, is when we're doing it real time.
Agreed, 100%. And I had that same struggle with Elaine too. Was one of the earliest kind of experiments I did down at Rodale was I took a rhizo sheath. So I took a grass clod and I dug it up so that I got the root ball. And I cut the root ball in half, and I started sampling different parts of the root ball to see, because she'd been preaching to me that, it's all aerobic, it's all aerobic. And I just wanted to verify for myself. I'm not one to just take things for law, right? I want to know. I'm a curious guy. So I scoped it, and I found pockets with ciliates in it, and pockets that had rotifers and other both facultative and anaerobic organisms. And I went back and I tried to talk to her about it. I said, Elaine, I mean, look, this is a healthy grass plant, and it's got, both anaerobic and aerobic biology in it. So how can you just constantly knock down anaerobes as bad guys? And that's when she explained to me what happened to her in the past, where she had a grad student who basically took fresh cow manure, added a ton of molasses, brewed it for 48, 50 hours, dumped it on a tree and killed it. And then went back and said, oh no, Elaine's work is no good. It doesn't work. It's not right. It kills things. And Daniel got her fired. Definitely set back her career. She'd lost a lot of respect in the ivory tower, community, university, college level, league. And so that's why she took such a stance the way she did about anaerobes. And I was like, oh man, well, I guess I understand, why you have to say what you have to say, because if you say it's okay, someone's going to do it really bad and then come back and advertise this or get the word out that, again, trying to kill the understanding, the world, or that at that time, the early new science that goes against synthetic chemistry. So anyway,
understandable. And if you look at EM too, when we first learned EM over 20 years ago, you were always taught to extend it. 1 to 1 to 20, let that ferment, extend, then take a little bit out and start another batch. 1 to 1 to 20. So you always had some going, and you always had some to share. But in our country, we don't ferment shit. People will use dirty containers, right? And since we're not keen to fermentation and what's required for that, EM had to put the brakes on that, because if you say you're using EM and then you don't do it right, you can give a really bad name to the company. So once you extend it once, you don't call it EM no more. But that's where, in our, using the good practices, you can keep it going for a long time. That's how it was taught. But I understand now why they don't promote and teach that.
Yeah, it's That's a negative side of having the ability to give people an opinion that probably shouldn't have one on a public platform. You know, because they can crash it, they can cancel you, even though you're right and they're wrong. So, yeah, that's the struggles of present day society and humanity. All right, so now that we've clarified what EM is, again, it's a fungal component, the yeast. It's an aerobic, the bacillus, and it's an anaerobic, the purple or non-purple sulfur. I keep screwing that up. Let's get into Bokashi. So Bokashi is many different things to many different people. So in your mind, why don't you kind of like walk us down the road of what your understanding of Bokashi is, or how you make your Bokashi?
Okay, well, I understand Bokashi is just referred to Japanese word, and it means fermented organic matter. So that's why the word is still used publicly, and it's not owned or nothing. You can ferment organic matter with anything, with yeast, lactobacillus. So there's a lot of when we ferment organic matter, we refer to that as Bokashi. So I learned to do Bokashi through using EM. The EM recipe that I use for Bokashi, we started out using half rice bran, half wheat bran. In Japan, they have more rice than wheat, so that's why most of their Bokashi was rice. So as it made it to the Americas, we have more wheat than rice. They still wanted to keep some of the tradition by using the rice, but the wheat is obviously much cheaper. So we would take the organic matter, the half rice, half wheat, and we would add in 4 ounces of EM, 4 ounces of molasses to about 5 gallons of water. And this is maybe 50 pounds of substrate. And then you can add that 5 gallons into the 50 pounds of substrate, mix that all up. And you're at the right moisture when you hold that biomass together, just a little bit of water comes squeezing out of there. You don't want that thing ringing with a lot of water. So once I have my organic matter moist with the fermentation is going to start to begin, I either throw it into a plastic bag and close it up tight so it can begin an anaerobic fermentation, or I can throw it into barrels or buckets, close the top, and seal it. We want to make sure it's closed up. The yeast and the lactic acid are going to convert the sugars and gas out CO2. The purple non-sulfur bacteria is going to convert the sugars and gas off oxygen. So you're going to have CO2 and oxygen both maintained in that container. It's really super cool if you're doing it for the first time to do it in a plastic bag, because you could literally watch that bag blow up like a balloon as it ramps up its fermentation. And then it begins to implode back down as it gets towards the end. So you can see where these cool gas exchanges are happening. And then you can really begin to time. So when you're doing it in barrels, you'll know exactly what's happening during those times because you're kind of seeing it in the bags. So I'll let that ferment about 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, depending on the size of the project, you can use the Bokashi fresh. Just get it out there and do your crops. So maybe you just made enough for what you need. But if you have extra that you need to store, we ask, and it's best to dry or fermented organic matter, because since it's wet and moist, it's going to want to attract microbiology still. But once you dry it, it will go into a dormant state. It could stay dormant I've used Bokashi 2 to 3 years old, and it still fuzzes up nicely. So it can go dormant for quite some time. There's a lot of nutrition in there. So that's basically how I make my Bokashi, take it through fermentation and then dry it.
Nice. That was really well said, and I think that was a great way to explain the broader view. Now, typically, when you're using molasses, I'm assuming you're using blackstrap or unsulfured.
Yeah, but not always. I mean, we use pretty much, and I've even used non-organic. I use sorghum. Lots of different sugar sources, and I find it still comes up the same, but I'm not looking at it on the scope. So, that's where somebody who does a scope maybe can answer that better. Performance at the end of plants, as far as terpene scores go, I hit the target that I'm looking for. I either need to double or triple what my client has been putting out. So using all the different sugar sources, I've even used like dry molasses in the powder form, and still came out great. So there's a lot of times depends on what because my clients wanted to spend a certain amount of money. I still got the fermentation going, and I can't see a lack in behavior at the end results from the host plants. That's the basic brew. That's the basic recipe that I started out with. But now it was in America. We have to. Bokashi means that you're using things that are being thrown away. That's really how the culture developed. You don't want to be buying materials typically to then take them through these processes. In third world countries, there's not a lot of money. So when you think about a lot of us in cannabis farming, where there isn't a lot of money, this is a perfect thing to do. So if you're taking organic matter from the community, which is being redirected into landfills, you can end up with some pretty amazing bokashi. I've made bokashi from beer waste. People who make beer waste, they make one batch of beer and toss that shit away. Amazing bokashi out of that stuff. Popcorn from the kettle corn dudes at the farmer's market. It's full of sugar already, and the corn is nutritious as can be. That makes amazing bokashi. Grape waste from the wineries, amazing. But even basic stuff like we would make it with just wood chip shavings from the mills. As long as it's not treated, we would use the wood shavings and ferment that up to use as bokashi. And the reason why we can do that for cannabis is because most of us already have a pretty nutritional soil. So all we need to do is really get the biology going. So being able to use a substrate that's not expensive and free like the wood chip, dude's already got all these amendments in the soil. I just got to get this thing turned on. You can see by redirecting the wood chips, man, that works out real good. But in the bokashi process, as we moved along also, we then learned about the biochar. Adding the biochar to your fermentations, you're never going to lose a batch. Things happen so differently when you have that kind of carbon and electrical influence in your bokashi. That purple non-sulfur bacteria loves electrons, gives off electrons. True Jedi microbe right there. Mm-hmm. So you put in that char, your bokashi, we noticed really, really became amazing from adding the biochar. And just like I told you when we would do the extension with the EM, the 1:1 to 20 and a 10% on a liquid, we would add in 10% of what I wanted to unlock in the bokashi. So if I needed to get my back guanos unlocked, I can add 10% in that bokashi, take that through the fermentation, you guys. All that's ready to go. And I can use way less product, 10% product, to do what I was doing at 100%. And it's bioavailable. I'm not waiting for it. It's instant, ready to go. So this is where we're able to take our amendments and make the bokashi and then do everything in one swoop. Get my biochar in, get my nitrogen bokashi going, get my flowering bokashi going. Or even like now, the off seasons, no one's growing stuff. Your beds are sitting. You could have your wood chip bokashi already out there going. But, the beds don't sleep. The microbiology does not sleep. It keeps rolling and keeps rolling. So the more we can keep it running, then we'll drop that plant in come season. Whew, engine's already running.
Yep.
So you get going.
All right. So you said wood chips. You said wood shavings. What about sawdust?
Yeah, 100%. Just as long as they don't have no chemies, you want to make sure it's clean. That's just great fungal.
Can the wood chips be fresh, or do they have to be aged?
Nope, fresh.
So you can lock that nitrogen up. That's fantastic. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. If you did want more nutrition, you could just sprinkle in a little bit of your fish in there or your kelp or something and make that with your wood chip. But you shouldn't have to go buy wheat bran. You should have to go buy rice bran, something like that. Keep that.
Another thing you said about spent brewer's waste or spent grains. I've had some amazing results with nematodes with that stuff. If you sprinkle that into your compost as you're making it, man, when you go back a couple, 3-4 months later, you will see so many nematodes that you've never seen before. I mean, just incredible populations. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, and distillers' waste is better than brewers' waste because distillers' waste doesn't have any hops in it, and the hops is a biocide. So that's something to keep in mind. If you can get distillers' waste, it's better. If you can't, then take what you can get, because either way, that spent product, that spent grains, has amazing power to really boost that higher level biology.
Yeah, and then later down the line, people started just using bokashi in their beds. But when we started, we actually used the bokashi to ferment food waste. And this is where we really were able to save a shit ton of money in production, because you're already eating food.
Yep.
You're already tossing hella food out. So by adding that bokashi that we make into a bucket with our food waste, we're composting, but we're not doing thermophilic composting.
Right.
We're doing fermentation composting. And in thermophilic composting, things gas off. And when it gases off, that means it's nutrient. That's energy.
Yep, you lost.
If I can lock it up in a bucket with a lid, I was able to ferment the food waste. There's a little spigot down at the bottom. I was catching all this compost tea that then I can dilute down. It was like a tablespoon per gallon. It's so strong because it's basically all the food you've been eating, fermenting, and then just collecting into a juice down at the bottom. And then after 2 weeks of fermenting that bucket, I'd either go put it into the garden beds, dig it down into the ground, or I'll have new potters where you can break that down into the potters, halfway into your potters, put the dirt on top, let it sit for 2 weeks, and straight up just stick your plant in there. And everything that your plant needed was from your food waste. So that really is what gave, and this is when hydroponics was, just about to tail out, but still going strong. And we were trying not to spend any money. So we just were like, what the hell? You can ferment shit? Oh my God. And food waste is completely different fermented than going through a thermophilic, transition. You can really capture a lot of stuff from the community and save a shit ton of money, but your plants will grow like you've never seen, and you ain't going to no hydro store.
Nope.
Yeah.
And I think, the key to this whole thing is the understanding that as the aerobes gas off CO2, the anaerobes gas off O2, so they're canceling each other out. So they're like basically the best stomach on the planet as far as digesting food waste. So let's talk about volume for a minute. When you're making food waste bokashi, is it 50-50 food waste to bokashi, or is it a different ratio?
No, so let's say you have about a quart of food waste, typically what we have after a good veggie meal chopped up. Then you're going to throw in maybe just a handful of your bokashi in there. Very little. You just need a little bit of that bokashi to hit the surface of your food waste, and then it kicks off right away into a ferment. So, it's very, very little.
So very much like
it's like 10% maybe, 5-10% maybe.
Yeah. Does it matter if it's meats and veggies and cheeses and all these different things, or you specifically only been playing with veggies?
Nah, dude, we would throw the bones, the meats. That's what makes it special. The bokashi, you could trap most of the stuff you can't in your normal composting. So you can throw all your meats in there. You can't use milk, but you can put your cheese in there. And it's such an efficient system, Leighton, that, Japan's had for over 20 years facilities where they'll drop bokashi buckets off and everyone's, apartment door pretty much. Like we have garbage bins. People fill them up. They collect them again, take them down to the bokashi plant, or they throw them into a big machine, finish fermenting it, make sure it's fermented right, and then put it all into pellets and dry it. And then farmers can come get the pellets that are just jamming with all the beneficial microbes and nutrition. So, when you can do a lot of food redirecting from this thing. And that's what makes it so cool when, no matter where you're doing your own garden because you want to save money, or you've taken on other projects as well. School gardens, man, if you're doing school gardens, the kids never eat their vegetables. They
Right.
throw that shit away. Yeah. So I think we were trapping like 50 pounds a day from 300 kids. And we were building these garden beds that were immaculate. And the teachers and the parents are like, wait, we haven't gave you no money for any soil. What's happening? And it was like, fuck the bucket, dude. We take all the kids' lunch waste. They were actually embarrassed when they realized how much waste we had. But it's like, that's how people can kind of look at like how you're eating as a human, how much you're wasting, right? It really does a lot of things. You think it's for the garden, but it starts to become this whole mirror on like, what the fuck am I eating?
Dude, I had a guy talking at the soil and compost stage at the Heirloom Seed Fest out here. His name is Steven Weinbrand, and he's brought a process. It's basically food waste composting to the LA school communities. And he said that the most interesting thing that he never anticipated was how excited the kids were going to be. And he never anticipated the teachers all of a sudden starting to realize like how they can weave this composting and food waste and regenerative and recycling into all of their classwork. And so it not only affected the kids in a way that they were all excited every time Steve came to work with them, but it also excited the teachers into how to better educate or make aware to the kids, like all of the other wastes, like packaging, the plates, the stuff, the food comes in. So it really like opened up an avenue that was very much unanticipated, but had amazing consequences.
No, real talk.
Yeah, and now those teachers where he started have talked to other teachers at other schools and have said, hey, you really need to bring this guy in. And it's not just about making compost. It's about getting kids excited and then about weaving in this understanding of how to be more mindful of what you're wasting so that you're not being a contributor to the problem. You're at least starting to step back and be less of a problem and more mindful of the things that you do and the things you purchase, right?
100%. And this is what's cool. It's like, because it's our community, the cannabis community, that seems to be at the forefront of knowing how to do a lot of things. And, we did it exactly where you need to learn how to do it first, at your home, in your closet, right? Then at your buddies. Then it's going to expand out now to your schools, right? But what's cool, like if you're into Bokashi and you're into EM, you can type up EM Teacher's Manual. There's a freaking 25-page super cool pamphlet in there to where the kids can have curriculum to then bring this thing out to the schoolyard. And we're the ones who know how to do it, And this is, unfortunately, they're not teaching this in the universities.
No.
But it's us at home who are doing it in our gardens, who we're going to have to be like, fuck, I like this thing. This is cool. EM Teacher's Manual, let's drop it. And then, man, we get the kids on it. It's game on. Just like you saw, these things just open up a whole box of so many other feel goods and what we need right now, that it's coming through the soil. All this magic is going to come through the soil. And the people who are going to carry it forth are the ones listening to the program, the ones doing it in their home, making the ferments, scale up on this thing. People are going to have to feel like, yeah, this is the calling. I'm going to have to get brave and scale this thing up, but you are the ones who know how to do it.
Dude, that was probably one of the greatest revelations I got after the very first conference, the Science of Organic and Regenerative Cannabis Cultivation, was the level of information that cannabis growers had that superseded beyond a shadow of a doubt what farmers knew.
Right.
Like they were into microbes, they were into compost, they were into organic amendments, they were into rock dusts and powders and flowers, they were into kelp and hormones and shit that even at the collegiate level they don't teach, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And so, it dawned on me after that first conference, after I calmed down and recovered, because it was, a party as well as just a conference, that the cannabis community could be the thing that breaks chemistry's hold on cultivation, on agriculture, on big ag, because they could save a fortune by using these types of preparations versus killing shit. You know, the fertilizer goes down, the plant grows weak, but guess what? It attracts pests, whether they're fungal or insect or whatever. Don't matter. But if you're growing healthy plants, you eliminate out of the gate all of the pesticides. And then on top of that, even if it was cost you the same amount of money for the nitrogen versus the Bokashi food waste, whatever, you still saved all the things that you had to use to kill things, right? Let alone killing yourself. No one ever talks about, oh, well, how is my health after being exposed to all these things for years, right? They don't ever take that into consideration. You know, and even the farmers, for the most part, have been so brainwashed that all they care about is how many bushels an acre they got. And the farmers that I worked with, I'm like, well, wait a minute, you're looking at this all wrong. And like, oh, no, it only matters the bushels. I'm like, all right, you paid $5 to get 100 bushels per acre, and you paid $300 or paid $200 to get 300 bushel. How much money did you make?
Yeah.
Right. Or how much money did you lose when you add in all of the labor, all of the diesel, all the equipment repairs, and everything else? That was the only way I could get them to even start thinking about the fact that bushel doesn't fucking matter. All it matters is what did it cost you per bushel, period. The rest of it is irrelevant. You know, I don't care, you know, yeah, all right, maybe your ego is important to you. Maybe you need to walk into the coffee shop and say, I did 250 bushels per acre. If that's what you need to do, cool, but you're in business to make money and to grow food, hopefully healthy food, not shit food, right? That's your job as a farmer. Make money and grow healthy food and hopefully create a healthy environment. Well, that all got lost with chemistry, brainwashing, the nitrogen companies, the insecticide companies. They're the ones that caused that huge disconnect. And now when you're talking to farmers, it's like ripping teeth out to get them to just to go back to the basics of what did it cost you per bushel. Now, I don't care how many bushels per acre you've got. So, you know, in many ways, I pray that the cannabis community does open the eyes to these farmers. And in some ways it kind of did with hemp. Hemp blew up for a minute and then hemp got stomped out, just like cannabis. But it definitely shifted some opinions and got people to think a little bit more about, you know, what is the bottom line? Where am I at? So I just sent Ken a picture, a video. And Ken, I'd like to bring this up because this is what we're talking about as far as preventing nutrients from volatilizing.
You're going to have to give it a few minutes, Leighton. I sent it to myself on email and it hasn't shown up yet. So,
all right. Well, do you want me to try to send it to email? Would that be helpful? Or
if you could send it directly to my email, that would work a lot better than me trying to send it to myself through my cell phone.
The little things in life.
I'm in my basement surrounded by concrete. It doesn't work as well as normal things, you know.
All right. I am sending it right now. And as soon as it comes up, just hop back on and let us know. All right. Empty subject. Send. Oh, damn it. Try sending as an attachment. I don't know if it's going to go, Ken. You may have to just wait the other way. But anyway. All right. Let's dive a little deeper into the understanding of adding biochar to a Bokashi mix, because like you brush the surface on the fact that biochar is, well, it's got a lot of properties, but one of the most important properties is that it's both an electron donor and an electron sharer. In other words, it will bond with other atomic structures, molecules, and hold them in place. Now, people worry about it locking up, kind of like using fresh chips on a tree or a new planting. You will harvest the nitrogen out of the soil, and in some cases even cause nutrient lock. And that's fact. But what I think most people miss is that if the chips are, old, that's not a problem. If the biochar is inoculated, that's not a problem. So please go into a little bit more depth about your understanding of what that relationship of biochar is to both the atomic level elements as well as the organisms themselves.
Okay, so for me, I'm looking at the big energy. That purple non-sulfur bacteria is reacting so different around the biochar that really is the key. Once I can get that little booger to start to really grow and perform and do its thing, I know it's going to make its way into the plant. It's going to go endophytic. This is what it does. It loves to go into things, not just plants, but it'll go into other microbes too and partner with them. So the fact that it just wants to partner with so many things, if I can get this guy going, you know, if all the microbes that are in that consortia, he's probably the one that's been on Earth the longest, you know, when it was toxic and gassy and hot and thermophilic. This guy would have just been so happy farting oxygen the whole time, eating all the toxic stuff. So for me, I feel like if I can deal with that thing and he knows how to work with light, then he'll teach the plant and the other things how to work with light. And that means when light situations are not optimum, that having this quantum biology partner, this microbe in there, this is where we now are going to crank it up into the next level, because I'm looking at the big energy. You know, I've always felt like there was something different the way my plants stood when they were in partnership with a good living Bokashi soil. I would call it plant yoga. The way the leaf tips stretch out and flatten out. You can just tell like every cell is working with light differently. So for me, when I make the Bokashi, I really want to get that purple non-sulfur bacteria going. The other guys are cool too. The yeast will eat up organic matter quicker than anyone's business and make that ready for the plant. The lactic acid bacteria is a little clean freak. You know, if you think of pickles and olives, it doesn't succumb to rotting. So if those two microbes in the soil, one making things bioavailable, the other one making things super clean, I want to really focus now on the unseen, the energy of the quantum biology that's contributed from that purple non-sulfur bacteria. And the char is where it's all going to come from. So that's why I like to use the char. And it first started out that the char in the Bokashi buckets would definitely keep them from not spoiling and not smelling anything funny. When you have that much carbon in there too, things are happening during the fermentation that keep it more favorable as far as the olfactories go than not having it in there. So these are the kind of indicators to me that are telling me life is moving regenerative with this charcoal in there. And, you know, think about carbon. You know, carbon is one of those old elements everything needs. So then I start to really think like, man, I know about the wood carbon, but there's this other form of carbon that I've missed for years of growing that didn't enter my life until about 15 years ago, 12 years ago. So focusing on the biochar and also its honeycomb structure, which is going to be able to house a lot of this microbiology that we're growing, means that the microbiology is going to be able to stay a long time. So having that char in there means I'm going to be able to protect the colonies even longer. So I can see where all of these components were just tying together to make a better Bokashi bucket. But at the end results, when we would take product to the lab, we saw the double and triple terpene scores. That's what let me know, like, okay, terpene is a carbon ring. Carbon ring strength is going to be influenced directly by electrostatic of carbon in the soil. So if I can make these damn things strong and hold on, they won't gas off as quickly, then I'll show better on the scores. And the whole thing was, you know, medicinal. I've always done cannabis. It's a medicinal thing. And we know when we have those terpenes in there, we didn't even know what they were called back in the day, right? Before Dr. Russo came strong with it. But we knew like all these different smells meant like we feel better as patients. So then that's really the encouragement is like, man, we need to feel better. How do I make medicinal flowers in a way that's going to have the maximum amount of carbon rings. So no matter what I'm growing medicinally, whether it's my pearly everlasting or my the cannabis, you're going to have the terpenes specific to each plant that's going to have that biochemistry in which I'm trying to harvest to keep myself strong and healthy. So it comes down to that carbon. So there was like no way to get away from it. Now we're looking at another way in which we're making carbon, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But now I'm thinking about how to ramp that energy up higher in the carbon. So now there's many new ways we're making char before we're doing the basic stuff. But it's like about ramping up the energy in that char so it can be a semiconductor of the soil for a long time to come, way beyond my years here on Earth.
Love it, dude. Fucking love it. All right. So, dude, there's so much to unpack in that last little fucking paragraph. All right. Let's get to basics. So, by volume, 10% biochar or 5% in your Bokashi bucket?
10.
10%. Okay. Charged or uncharged? And in other words, inoculated or uninoculated?
Uncharged.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Have you ever tried charged?
Yeah, but it's just kind of a waste of money because things are going to move in there anyway.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just didn't know if it added to diversity.
Yeah, and Layton, I've even ran uncharged. We have there's a video on YouTube called Bobsled Farms. It's a tier 2 cannabis farm. We split the field in half, and we ran biochar. These are 400-foot rows, so 200-foot one way. Got biochar all in the rows, 8 rows. And then the other way, we only use biochar at planting when we put the cannabis plants in. Mostly because they ran out of fuel money. So I was wondering, like, what the fuck's going to happen? How's things going to work? Like, you couldn't tell the difference in the growth visually looking at the entire field. And, when you look at the video, you can see and everything looks so uniform. But it wasn't until we went to the lab, everything got processed into live resin, that you can see the difference. And the difference was because in the long rows of carbon, the connection was much more efficient to pass nutrients back and forth than just in the little holes at planting, which work well for water holding capacity and things like that. But we scored a little bit lower in consistency on terpenes. But here's why I'm telling you the story. The field where we used all that stuff, we did a char. That was raw char from Rogue Biochar, as raw as it can get. It's like an 83% carbon content. They really cook it up. But what made it a difference and why I was so confident is because we use compost teas, and I make all of my EM with inoculants in them. So once I was able to put that plant in, I was hitting them with teas continually, little by little, as that plant was getting out. It wasn't like one saturation. I would tease that plant for a week until I had everything going. So then it was getting charged by my tea, but also more importantly, charged by the IMO from that site in which that hole was dug to put that char in. So it was, yeah. So, I mean, for years, we've always told people charge. But if they're doing a lot of the things that we see on the show, you'll be surprised what you can get away with. And how things work. And it's pretty amazing. You save a lot of money and time by not having to charge it if you have the right amendments going in that team.
That's amazing. Okay, go ahead and play this. And let me give a little backstory. Right, what you're looking at is me standing in the back of a box truck spraying a MJ Muncher juice from the Ecosphere Sciences crew. We're essentially inoculating compost that's come through PFRP, which is pathogen reduction. Mm-hmm. Now, I want you to pay attention to the steam because it's not steam. It's volatilized compounds, and those compounds are ammonia. It was so bad that I could not breathe standing next to this during the process. So I had to actually climb up into the box truck so that I was a little bit above the steam as it was coming off because there was zero wind today. This is what I was doing this morning. I was complaining about.
Okay.
Go ahead and play this. Look at this.
Damn.
That's all nitrogen. That's all fucking nitrogen.
Yeah, hot, stinky. No, see, shit like that, if you had your char in there, you definitely won't be at that level.
No.
And you know what's cool is like even like when you're running your liquids like that, we would get the activated carbon. A little goes a long way because it's so micronized that you could run that right through the pumps. And then once it's on the soil, it trickles its way down a lot easier because it's so micronized. But you'll see it starts to trap and you'll get the benefits of reducing that freaking nitrogen like that.
The only problem I have with this particular company is that their business model is 45 days in and out. You cannot slow down. You cannot play. We don't care. We're going to just dump it on orchards, whatever. So it's been a challenge to get them to a point where they're even open-minded enough to bring ecosphere sciences in. I basically had to bum rush the motherfuckers to get that machine in there. I basically kept telling them, hey, look, we're going to get it dropped off next Thursday. Do you have a problem? You know, you got to tell me now because the truck's picking it up tomorrow. And finally, they just said, all right, sure, bring it down. And the results, dude, they'll be on the show probably in January or maybe February after we've got the third round of results. So we did Agriment 1.0. I have all the results for that. Agriment 2.0, we completed that middle of last week or early last week. That went off for testing. We'll probably get those results back early in January. And then 3.0 kicked off today. So we got to go 16 days in cooking, and then those will get off for testing. So, but the results have been fantastic. And it's actually kind of turned their mind around a little bit to the thought of like, oh, we can only sell 20% of the compost we make and the other 80% we have to dump. Well, what if we could sell that, you know, maybe 30%, maybe 40%? That's going to make us a lot more profitable because basically instead of paying to dump it, people are coming to buy it, right? Big fucking savings.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a long and short story about this particular company. But as things progress, I think that their minds will be open because more and more people are requesting, you know, fungally dominant or biointensive or biocomplete compost. So as those clients continue to rise as far as, you know, incoming inquisitions or about whether they have a product or not, I think it'll definitely change their mind. And dude, look at the fucking number of questions you got. All right. So we're only an hour in. So it's going to take us at least an hour to get through those.
Come on, let's do it.
All right. So you're going to have to come back again because we're again.
We're going to biochar. And then we got the whole quantum biochar cracking right now with MIT and EM. And Noah's been talking about that whole deal, man. We're going to have to do that.
So when we finish today, go book your next session. All right.
All right. We'll do it. Will do.
I'm trying to get him on as a permanent host, you know, so we can just keep rolling with this, you know. So first question, how to incorporate active EM with SCD into feeding chickens. I got SCD mother culture and activated it. Can I ferment chicken feed using the activated EM?
Yes, use the EM at 1 teaspoon per gallon in their water. You'll see there when they shit, it's like usually really dark, but once you get the EM in there, it's going to fuzz up white immediately. You know their stomachs are going to start cranking. And then make the Bokashi recipe. You're going to do the Bokashi 4 ounces of EM or SCD, 4 ounces of molasses to your substrate, your 50-pound bag of chicken feed. Make that into a Bokashi, let that ferment. And then once that's fermented, you're only going to add that into your normal chicken feed, 5%. So it's just like a little bit of yogurt. So that would be your Bokashi chicken feed. You're going to add to your normal chicken feed at 5% on a regular basis. But you just make your chicken feed like you do Bokashi. Or you go easy and you can buy the wheat brand Bokashi. That's actually you can feed to your chickens too.
And I'm assuming that you need to let your Bokashi chicken feed dry out so that it doesn't start going anaerobic.
Yeah, every time we use Bokashi and make it, dry it out because it will pick up other stuff. So that will stabilize it.
Yeah, you don't want to. It shouldn't smell, and it shouldn't be all fuzzy or different colors. It should be just like raw ingredient.
Yeah, and biochar and chickens go great too. So if you added your biochar, man, you'll reduce the smells of your coops so fast because all those ammonias are not going up.
No, they're locking into the and then they'll be biologically available in your soil. So you talk about a win-win.
Yeah, you have some of the best chicken poop out there, man. People
you won't burn the plant. Yeah, sorry to keep interrupting you.
No, you're
no worries.
Getting excited.
No doubt. SCD, what does SCD stand for?
Sustainable Community Development. Matt Wood, he's one of the first 4 guys who brought EM to United States with Dr. Higa. Student with Higa a long time. And then, because Japanese culture is different than American culture, Matt Wood knew that we needed a different entry point. So with Dr. Higa's blessing, he started SCD Probiotics, and it follows the same principles. But great company, great products, and thumbs up to them.
So somebody's asking, chickens, what about my gut?
Yes, you can buy probiotics for your gut. Both companies have some for human consumption, and they were made in a health setting so that they can legally sell it that way, but the microbes are no different. They even have another secondary product where they added in different beneficial mushrooms and herbs that have been fermented, and then you can take a drink of that. So it's really bioavailable for you, especially with people who have really bad gut problems that aren't going to break it down, getting it pre-digested. It's just like our plants, right? It's going to be better absorbed by you. And then my favorite is Dr. Higa has an EMX Gold, truly the strongest formula of all of the EM consortias. And I think he's basically fermented like a rice bran, a papaya, and seaweed. And it's the extract from that fermentation. It's a very golden colored deal, but it's so strong for regenerative. All these things are, they're made for your health, for eternal use. And then they have soaps and all the things for your skin too.
I wish you could had time to pull those resources up, but maybe what we can do is, hopefully people are listening. They'll can take the time to find them as or earmark.
Terragenics, I think it is.
Terragenics and SCD Probiotics.
Yeah, I know I had Terragenics reach out to me. I'm waiting to hear back from them, but hopefully we can have them on in the near future as well.
Perfect.
So
right, we're gonna have to go a lot faster. They're coming in quicker than we can answer them.
All right, we're gonna jump on a case here. Not sure if I'm late, but can you talk about how you extend your EM and how much can it be extended at a time? 10% or what addition?
So you can extend any amount of your EM, but the ratios are going to be 1 part EM, 1 part molasses to 20 part water. So if that's your question, so if I bought a quart, you could just extend that quart and take it to 5 gallons, or you can do half of that, 1 cup of that into 1 gallon. It depends on how much usage you have. So usually what I buy, I make sure I have a little bit to use for a few weeks, and then I'll extend the other half. So if you bought a quart, get on making a gallon right away. And then, once you have that gallon, you can make 5. It goes quick, faster than you can use it. So, yeah.
What is the time length between
2 weeks or a pH drop below 4.0?
Full bar there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So Case has a whole bunch of questions here. If making a batch, should I have some finished brew to add to the next batch? Thinking of a way to expand while brewing the next ferment.
No, always extend the brew that just finished. It's fresher, it's livelier, it's going. Just take some out of that one and then make your next one. And I always find like if I can keep them running like that, then they're stronger all the time. And I think that's like people who use EM all the time, I keep mine going all winter. So now when the farms jump in the spring, they know I've been doing it all winter. They can do it themselves, but the EM's a little slower because it's just waking up. My guys, I'm doing every 2 weeks so I can keep them running. So if I get, a 5 gallon going, I can take a quart out of the 5 gallons and start a new 5 gal. and I always got this sucker pumping. And then they're stronger. Just like if you're working out all the time, and if you're moving, you're gonna be much easier integrating. So keep it going.
So then his next question is: you ferment 5 days, 6 weeks, 6 months,
14 days, or pH drop at 3.5. Usually in the summertime it takes 7 days, but right now winter it'll be 14 days. It depends where you're at.
In Canada, about 6 months. Yeah.
No, you guys are 14 days.
Okay, Case's next question: if you make a ferment with EM and apply to a field which at some point in the year gets flooded, will that field ferment underwater, or will that ferment underwater?
Hopefully, because if you go through a ferment, it's not going to ferment, but you're going to get a lot of the microbes don't sleep. If they'll self-divide every 20 minutes. But we know that the EM consortia, if you have a lot of the lactic acid bacteria in there, you're not going to have pathogens. If you've got a lot of the yeast, it's going to start to make things bioavailable. You'll get better drainage going on in that part of the area. And then if you have the purple non-sulfur bacteria, it's going to go endophytic with everything around there and really make this hub of life start to get ready to pump. So that's actually one of my favorite times to add EM, because it's just sitting, you're not growing in it. And that soil's probably not your best come grow time anyway. So if I can get the EM in there to start to break up stuff and loosen stuff up, I can get that field to drain.
Yeah, the yeast will help with the fungal populations as well. I think that's really important, and that's what he's talking about with drainage. And yeah, the purple sulfur will love to be underwater.
Yep.
So I think it's the ideal time is to apply it before it floods.
Yeah, and then typically that's like anaerobic because it's underwater. But if you got purple non-sulfur farting oxygen, it's like you got a pump in there.
You got an air bubble.
Yeah. So it'll stay healthier for your next move.
And Case is on with us next week, guys. Just to let you know, he's the cranberry farmer from Maine. So that's next week.
I think he's Cape Cod. I don't think he's Maine.
Oh, okay.
He's down near Key. Yeah, he's down near Key.
Now, he also wanted to know, have you fermented cannabis?
Yes, man, 100%. The stalks, the flowers, when they're done with the extraction, they're got a bunch of biomass we would pick up all the time and turn that into Bokashi. So, lots and lots of cannabis.
And the cannabis plant loves it because guess what? It's giving it back baby food that it took so much energy to extract out of the sand, silt, and clay.
Right.
So it's ideal. It's the ideal food for a cannabis. Cannabis. Not that I'm a cannibal, but
okay. Do you ever get tested for NPK or plant hormones or whatever?
He must be talking about your Bokashi. I'm assuming.
No, I've never tested it. I know they have tested. Typically with wheat bran, it's a 333, but we do ours at ground culture with coffee chaff, and we have not tested. That'd be good to know. The difference with ours, though, is because it is coffee chaff. That's the paper product that's on the bean. Sometimes you get a lot of your waste material with actual coffee in it, so it's not just pure paper. So it changes. Some stuff could score high nitrogen when some batches of that is actually light. So that's why I haven't felt necessary to test it, because my flow is not consistent as far as like one medium all the time. But what I love about it is it follows the principle of Bokashi. We close the loop in our environment. They're throwing this shit away by the tonnage down at in the landfills. It gases off and creates methane and CO2. We get it free from them, and it makes a great Bokashi.
Cool. So question is lactobacillus enough for Bokashi?
You can ferment with that, and you can call it Bokashi, but you're going to be missing two important players in getting the work done. So you'll have good success, but you can see, hopefully by listening to the show, why that purple non-sulfur bacteria is so important, the role that it's done for a long time, and then why the yeast is important as well.
Yeah, why work with 1/3? Why not
Right.
go the whole way, right?
Biodiversity.
Amen.
Yep. So when fermenting, do the inputs need to be fresh?
Do they need to be fresh? No. Dry stuff, like with the bag stuff we buy, usually the stuff we pick up from the hydro store, that's what's cool is you can use that, but at a 1/10 of what you normally are going to use. I'm in reference to the guanos and things like that. If you're going to do FPJs and stuff like that, it's great fresh, but it's also excellent dry because you're looking for certain terpenes when you're doing extractions of chilies, mints, garlic, and things like that. So they're both fine. They don't have to be fresh.
And if you think about it, using sawdust, that's obviously not going to be fresh, nor shavings. So no worries.
Okay. Does a ferment container need to be completely airtight or light deprived for best outcomes?
Yes, airtight means nothing's going to get in. We want the only thing in there is what we put in there: food waste and beneficial fungi bacteria, the Bokashi. So lock it up. And then we also want to make sure we get the gases trapped in there. I want to make sure that my PNSB has CO2 to eat. That's what it loves to eat. And I want to make sure that he's farting oxygen, which the other consortia is going to gas up and eat to. So lock it up. Lock it up.
Now, how about the darkness? Can they use a white bucket or a clear bucket?
White's good, just no direct sunshine. Yeah.
Okay. If you're not using your EM mother culture for a period of time, typically how long will it last before needed to add more molasses, and or do you judge by smell pH?
EM can sit for about a year before it starts to dip and do weird things. So typically it's not that you add molasses in, you're going to take some out and make a new batch. You don't want to just keep feeding that thing like a sourdough bread. Just pull out a new batch, do a 1 to 1 to 20, get that going. If you have extra EM, it's made for the creeks. It's made for your gutters. It's made to keep your drains clean. You pour them down your drains, put them down your toilets so it goes down to the sanitary factory. So you're never going to have too much EM. But you want to take it out. You don't want to add sugar to it. You want to take it out and make a new batch so it gets ramping up again.
Well, I know in India, they use it for cleaning the lavatories, the public lavatories all the time because it does such a good job and eats the odors and all the bad stuff. I'm on a septic system, so I put labs down my toilet on a regular basis to keep the biology going.
Yeah, India actually does it in their hospitals. Australia builds their subdivisions, and then in the shitter lines that go out, they have these fill tanks. So when people flush and water goes towards the municipal plant, small amounts of EM actually get injected into the lines, pre-treat the water before it hits the plant. It actually changes its classification before it even gets there.
Cool.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool what they're doing with it.
Well, some people are more advanced and willing to really do things that others aren't.
We'll get there.
Can you explain how he makes the Bokashi? Can he provide a reference? Is he using EM?
Yeah, using EM and SCD probiotics. Both of them I've used for sure. Combine the both together. And then I'm using the 50 pounds of substrate. And then I'm going to add 4 ounces of my probiotic to 4 ounces of molasses to 5 gallons of water and mix that thing up together. And then take that into a anaerobic fermentation, whether it be a bucket or a garbage bag. Tie it up tight and let that thing ferment 2 weeks. And then lay it out to dry.
Now, I have a question. You were mentioning you were taking out the extract at the bottom. I have a couple of Bokashi buckets with the same thing. It's got the spout on the bottom. How often are you producing enough really to take out?
Depends what you're eating. If you probably notice. So if you start eating more fruit, they have a little bit more water. then they're going to start dumping out and getting things going a little bit more. But if, you've got leafy greens right now, it's leafy green season, that they're not going to put out as much juices as if we got some cantaloupe and started throwing pineapple skins in there and things like that. Mm-hmm.
Now, somebody's asking, what kind of substrate are you talking about? You're talking the rice hulls and
wheat bran is what people are typically using in America. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what he's
any food store.
Yeah, but what he's trying to promote is you can use anything.
Right.
It's better to go find a waste stream like brewer's waste or distiller's waste.
Coffee waste.
Waste. Why pay for something?
Exactly. When you can get it for free other than fuel to go picking it up, definitely. So I have a question. I was making a Bokashi ferment using rice hulls and 2-row malted barley, as well as a 772 fishbone meal, EM1, and molasses. I forgot I had mixed it together and bagged it.
How long has it been fermenting? It should still be. Unlock it and dry it. See what's going on. You made basically what we've been talking about. So
dry it out. See what happens.
The only thing that could possibly be is it went too long. Maybe it was too wet. But this is what I'm telling you. When you do your moisture, you got to make sure you're not too wet, yet you're not too dry. Because if you're right in that sweet spot, you can let it go a little longer. But if you're too wet, it's gonna get sour on you. The microbials will go to a different position to try to save everybody, and it seems like it's more sour, more like a sauerkraut or something.
Well, I said I forgot about it, and it's now been in the bag for over a month. Is it still any good?
Yeah, crack it, but make sure you lay it out flat and let that thing start to dry. So
you'll
start drying that thing.
Yeah, you'll know. You'll be able to see it.
Right? As soon as you crack that thing.
Yeah. It blows you out of your socks, you've got a problem.
I feel good about it. Check it out. Let me know how it goes.
Okay, recently heard that people in Ghana are using banana peels to make biochar. Do they work as well as wood to make biochar?
Yeah, everything has a story and it's carbon. So we have to kind of remember that. Not one story is better than the other. All these stories are stories of survival and stories of rejuvenation. So they're all great. And it depends what we're doing with it too, though, So when we say better, what does that mean? Are you trapping stormwater material or are you growing plants? But the trick, just like Bokashi, the trick with biochar is to take a waste stream, carbonize it, and make it useful into something else that will produce more food. So in that area, ton of banana, it makes sense that they make the biochar from there. I'm from Portland, ton of Douglas and forest up here that needs to be thinned. It makes sense that we make it from the biomass that we have in each particular region instead of just letting it go up into the atmosphere. So they're trapping CO2 by doing it. That's very important right now.
And we did have a gentleman, Michael, from Blue Sky Biochar, talking about soft materials versus hard materials. The soft materials don't work as well, but they still work. You just got to use more of them. Whereas like out here in the Central Valley, all the biochar is made with nut hulls. So your pistachios, your walnuts, well, not walnuts as much, pecans, all of that stuff are not pecans up here. They're almonds, not cashews. Well, it doesn't matter. What he's trying to say is yes, look at your local biomass and focus on that as your feedstocks. Unless you're not going to have to pay for shipping or the product itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's the thing. When we say it doesn't work well, the light stuff, Leighton, actually traps so much micro things that the big stuff doesn't get. So if you have like contaminants coming through your water, you want them held up in that light char stuff before it hits the big water and comes through and can enter into your plant.
Great point.
I think we need them both. Yeah, they're both so important.
Well, it's like what's used in an aquaponics system to promote the biology that's going to eat that waste. The more surface area there is, the more available biology there is to break that down.
100%.
So, does EM1 contain purple non-sulfur bacteria, and how we make our own?
Yes, it's in there, and you can make your own with eggs. That little booger lives inside of eggs for some reason. There's a couple of KNF preps that incorporate eggs and let them sit out and ferment. Very stinky. I prefer to capture it through worm castings. It also lives in the belly of a worm. So by getting the worm castings, good healthy worm castings, you know you got this bacteria in there. You can make a tea from that and then add in your kombucha, which is going to have yeast and lactic acid bacteria. And you got something pretty close to EM without having to go to the store.
Fantastic. Lucas says, so doesn't suggest extinguishing the biochar with the EM1 water anymore. Is that just a cost thing?
Nah, my boy, that's the only way to cool it. But I didn't want to like jump into that because it's like I wanted to discuss basic biochar. I thought Leighton and I were going to have more time to get into why we extinguish with these other EM and with these other mineral filled components. So we will touch base on that next time. But dog, it's all about cooling down with microbiology that's consumed a lot of minerals, both plant minerals and rock minerals, and then adding in minerals themselves to surface coat the char. That's the next level. There's a company, I believe, what are they called? The Shito Group. They make something called Space Char out of California. Currently looking for a few farms down there to run their Space Char on a pilot project. Preferably, we're looking for almonds. And then there's what MIT and EM is making called Graviton Charcoal, which incorporates the components I just mentioned. So it's like next level char coming up, but it's super high energetic char, performs a lot like graphene, and two directional flows are extremely fast. And it taps into the quantum realm.
If you've got a paper on that, I'm sure Leighton and I would love to see that.
Okay, pass it on.
Okay, cool. Leighton?
Yeah. Well, like the next level of our understanding, like even within plants, they have 10 senses, people, right? That's quorum sensing. So, right? They're more intelligent than humans.
Right.
So, yeah, when you start talking about, these next levels of preparing or cooling or heating, all of that's going to play a part of it. So, yeah, I can't wait to go down that rabbit hole with you the next time you come on.
Yeah, it's definitely keeps me at the edge of my seat and makes me feel like day one when I learned about biochar. Because it just, if we ever feel like we know it all, we're assholes, right? So we have to somehow feel like, holy shit, I don't even know what they're doing. And, like I told you last time, the fact that MIT is doing this and they did it in a field where I've been trying to avoid for fucking years now, this electromagnetic farming thing. Now I got MIT and EM playing with it. Dude, how am I going to look the other way now? So this is where I'll send it to you guys. It'll blow your mind. Nice. But these guys are doing some stuff in physics that it's unreal. It's unreal what's happening.
Well, you just think that the biology is reading the genetic code of either us, the plants, whatever. We can't read the genetic code as well as they do, let alone, say, oh, well, we've only got so much calcium, so we can only build this type of cell. We can't build this one. Like, we're so far behind, and we think we're ahead. We're silly that way.
Yeah, we got some catching up to do.
You start getting into biosymbiosis. Holy fuck. That's just a rabbit hole that's so fucking deep. I mean, it's evolution, right? On a quantum scale, something that's happening so quick. And a lot of it's entanglement. So, that's deep, dude. That's fucking really deep.
Yeah, and if these processes were actually the processes that happened before, we just kind of were learning it backwards. You know what I mean?
Right?
But all of these energetic things they happen first before the macro things happen. So now we're kind of getting back to that, and it's just like, wow. I mean, you guys took the dive. I don't know if you've taken the quantum biology dive, but I mean, oh yeah, you did. Remember you had Homie on the show.
Yeah.
So it's like it all ties together, and it all ties together. And there's just some shit that I'm seeing with as far as frequency goes, where we can't ignore what the deal is, what's happening.
Dude, you there you go again.
No, Leighton, I gotta drop this on you real quick because this is just what blows my mind. That dang camp compost that I got a couple gifts from over there when I was there, and one of them was an eagle feather by an indigenous woman, and she explained how using the feather worked with our body and our senses. And I was like, I get that. We would do that quite a bit. But then she was friends with a physicist who came through with this thing, and it's basically just a little green laser, but it shoots through a cone. 2 magnets are in there and a crystal. I added this little freaking bioceramic bead from EM, but dog, this is shooting a photon and making a far infrared. I didn't even mess with it for the longest time, kind of just looking at it, played with it a little bit, but my brother-in-law, he has neuropathy and diabetes. They've been cutting his feet off. He's on 2 nubs. He hasn't felt below his legs in like 4 years. He has a wound on his foot that won't heal. So I'm like, hey, dude, like I got this light. Let's just fuck with it for 2 weeks. You come every day to my house for 2 weeks and let's see what happens. So we started running the laser light on his legs, and the bottom of his foot had a scar that wasn't healing. He came every day. And I would put this thing over his legs. We smoked joints, and I'd do this thing on his leg. But Leighton, after 4 days, he comes back and he goes, V, I feel like I can feel my legs again. I haven't felt them in years. They feel tingly. Comes back the next day. My feet fucking hurt. I can feel where they cut me. Now he has nubs, no toes. And when they've done all the surgery on his feet, they're so bad, they don't even bleed. There's nothing there, Leighton, just dead skin, okay? So now he's starting to feel where they cut him. On day 6, liquid starts to come out of the wound, okay? So when we look at what the hell is going on with our bodies, with light, she threw in this, I don't know, this is one of the silly little tuning fork at like 111. But these are the kind of things where it's not in my world. But now when on my free time, I'm looking at like vibration and light, and I'm watching somebody, when we typed up to look at neuropathy in diabetic patients, there's one paper that came out, 2 papers that are out. One came out a month ago that had to the day the exact thing of feeling the pain that my brother-in-law had, but the dude still had his feet in the paper. He still had his toes. He was not at that far of a stage of losing his feet yet. So you can see what happened to the cell, the nerve cell, the blood cell. How does these things come back that fast with light? Why does it surprise us so bad? But these are the areas where it's like, I'm taking this to my seed, where I'm doing my seeds now, and I'm going to bang out my seeds and see if I can't get my seeds, right? My clones, bing! It's got to get the cells jumping. If it got this man's foot that were gone, it's got to do something to my clones who don't have no roots either. No, right? Get them some new feet. So this is just, like I said, it's like day 1, but this is all tied to like biochar, electromagnetism of the char, this graviton charcoal, bringing forces of light down and being held in the soil by microbes and carbon. Man, it's all there. This is a fork and a laser, but it's really we make it in the soil too, so cells can divide and do their thing.
Bro,
energy, frequency, vibration.
Bro, you gotta look into the Rife machine.
What's it called?
Rife machine. He invented a machine through frequency that can heal any problem humanity has. And he was, you know, like Tesla, got all fucked up. They stole his equipment, ruined his reputation, blacklisted him. And there's still a few of the machines floating around. But bottom line is that tuning fork, you can buy a tuning fork for any frequency. And all you need to know is understanding of what frequency heals what. That information is still out there. So then once you realize, oh, you got cancer, oh, you got diabetes, just find out what the frequency is, get one of those tuning forks and bing, put it right on the area where you need it. And yeah.
And you know, if you look at like GW Pharmaceutical, look at what they did with cannabis.
Yep.
Type up what they're doing now. Do you know what they're doing now?
No.
It's all medical light frequency shit, dude. Yep. It's all vibration.
Yep.
That's like where they put the bank now.
Yep.
So I'm not like, holy shit.
Yeah, they failed.
I'm not a fan of GW Pharmaceutical, but I could see where like this is moving, vibes is moving to medicine. Of course, like I said, our people would use eagle feather and get you into a vibe. But now science is moving into a position where they can understand eagle feather. So, you know, it all takes that whole full circle, but it's all the same thing. You know, so they'll never take our eagle feathers from us. They'll take the lasers if they want, but our eagle feathers are always here.
Yeah, amen. And you know, they got their asses handed to them. They lost a fortune. So they had to pivot because they were going to either bankrupt or pivot, one or the other.
Yeah, and you can't even really work with something owned by the U.S. government anyway. They own the patent for CBD.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? When you look at it, break it down, nobody can really do anything with CBD until the patent's released from it. And the people who own the patent say there's no medical use to it. So we're kind of stuck in a little position here, boys. Have we been for a long time with this plant? But the eagle feather's still here, so we're going to use that one.
Amen. And yeah, there's a lot of information about life penetration. You know, penetrates down 5-6 feet in the soil. You know, the healing reds are really important. Blocking blue is important. So, or making sure you at least have adequate red to support the blue, because if it's just blue, you're going to get fucked. There's a lot out there about this stuff.
Yeah, and that's where what's cool is when EM they partnered with MIT and they bring down atmospheric subtle energies to copper coils down into the ground to get that purple non-sulfur bacteria to spin around a perimeter they have designed with Bokashi balls and salt and stuff to grow things in the middle of this spinning vortex of, you know what I mean? It's just like, whoa, what is happening here? Let me in on this thing.
Did you ever see the clay balls that are in a JDOM book? It's basically an EM2 clay ball. So the clay is the vehicle, right? But you soak the clay in a riverbed or a stream bed after you've prepared it. So you're getting the IMOs as well as the EMs and everything else. So there's a girl, Tina, what's her last name? Lala Grows and the Go Go Goats on Instagram. She made some of those years ago. It was when she had a ranch and she was trying to move into finding a way to make a living through preps and some of these other things. But the work that she did was friggin' badass. And I played with those balls on crops, and the way I figured to best deliver it, she would say, just take the ball and bury it next to the plant. But I found it was way more reactive and bioavailable if you just screened it, and graded it, and then sprinkled that around the area instead of just planting the ball. Check it out. Really cool information on that stuff.
Yeah, I bet you that's where we got the Bokashi ball from, because that's that's probably where the Bokashi ball came from.
Well, and the one story I heard was that I think the gentleman was in Portland or something. He was teaching kids at school. They made a whole bunch of these balls, took them down to the river, were throwing them in the river on Earth Day, and they went back and checked, and the silt that had built up over decades was gone. And they found that at the end of the where the water comes out, they were going to build a bunch of apartments or something. And there was wildlife there that they thought was extinct in the area. All of a sudden came back, and they couldn't even build these apartments because the floodplain had come back to life again.
Yeah, that was SNEPA. There's a film called Micropower. And it shows us doing it with the kids. And then it brought back the oysters down in the San Pablo Bay, where they hadn't been there in over 50 years. Yep. That bay actually caught on fire, and it fucking came back, man. So they had to stop putting the pylons in.
Just gotta love biology, man.
They're amazing. And what's cool is like when you do them in community, you can do it. You can set like a party and just roll a bunch of balls with people. For the energy that happens when people are able to actually do something, because we all know these things can do something. That once we realize, like, shit, why come we're not always rolling balls? I got a creek like right here. Why haven't I adopted that thing and put balls in there? Then we start to take responsibility for our area, and it's as easy as getting mud and rolling balls. Most of us have nephews, nieces, and kids that would love to participate in something like that. Yeah, and so it's like something that's so easy, takes a little bit of time. You'll watch waterways come back so quickly. We've watched rivers and creeks be completely green, completely clear up. Beavers start to move in and participate in the restoration. So it like sends some kind of sensors toward the rest of the wildlife to come over here. Life's happening again. So when you start to put them in your area, you look around. That's how you get hooked, because then you realize, like in a month or two, that didn't take long at all. I can see now the silt's gone. There's rock. Holy shit! Why come not everyone's doing this? And then you start to become partners with that river.
Well, that's why we do this podcast, dude, is to get the word out and to encourage people to try these things. And why not have your kids to a birthday party? Go make clay balls by the fucking river. You know what fun they would have?
Be the cool kid.
Just have to make that EM and supply the clay, and they'd love to make anything.
Yep. No, even if you just got the Bokashi and added it to the clay, you got your little Bokashi ball right there. That'll get you to where you need to go.
And you can get clay anywhere. I mean, you can mine out here, it's everywhere. Yeah, but if you go along the rivers and you hike the rivers, you can find natural veins of clay sticking out.
Yeah, so we better get back to some more questions.
Say again? I know. Go, go, go. We're running out of time.
Oh, we got 23 minutes. Hey, one YouTuber found his chicken eggs changed color feeding the chickens biochar. Have you encountered this? I think he said the eggs turned darker.
Yeah, 100%. There's more nutrient density in the egg. That's the coolest thing, too, to watch, is you look at your eggs before feeding them the EM and the Bokashi. And they're very yellow, but they'll go to this beautiful orangey, just full of life color.
Deep orange. So orange that it's like doesn't even look like a real color.
And then that's where it goes back, because the EM is now the purple non-sulfur bacteria, and everything's in the chicken. And then that egg has such a special relationship with purple non-sulfur bacteria that it just really gets.
Are we talking the inside of the egg or the shell itself?
Inside.
Yeah, inside.
The yolk.
Okay. Yeah. I know I was, we were having, when the pandemic was happening, there was shortages in everything. And a lot of the people up here use shells for their chickens, and they couldn't get them. So I suggested to the one lady to make a WCA, or the water soluble calcium, add that to the water, instantly solved the problems of soft shells and everything. Just worked beautifully.
Good.
So how much bioceramics is to EM and molasses per gallon container?
Okay, so I'm usually going about a tablespoon per 5 gallons on my extensions for the bioceramic. But you can go less, you could go more. It depends what you're doing with it. Most of my extensions are just to maintain the EM and keep them running. So that tablespoon for the 5 gallons will be for my basic. But if I'm doing something for my grow or plants that need to boost themselves up, I will double that in that fermentation to really get them going.
So that'd be like 2 tablespoons.
Yeah, 2 tablespoons.
Yeah. So not very much.
No.
Very, very little. Yeah, it's so powerful.
Don't be a moron.
Yeah, exactly. Keep the balance. Does anyone still do Bokashi with just food waste? What's the kind of Bokashi composting I did years ago? It's an anaerobic process, but isn't Bokashi process aerobic?
No.
No, Bokashi in buckets is anaerobic because you got your lid on there.
But it's aerobic because the off-gassing from the purple sulfur bacteria is oxygen.
Yeah.
So it's something in the middle.
Yeah. Right? It's fermenting.
Yep.
Well, it's like the article you sent me, Leighton, about the gentleman up in Canada that drilled down to an aquifer like 2,000 or 4,000 feet underground, and they found that there was actually biology that was aerobic living there that shouldn't be there because there's no oxygen. That must be what is happening. Is something like that to supply the oxygen.
Yeah,
there's bacteria that are producing oxygen on the bottom of the seafloor, and they're actually creating crystals of it. I mean, this is fucking nuts, people. It's fucking nuts.
I mean, look at our planet. How did we get all this oxygen? It didn't just show up. It was the opposite. You know what I mean?
It was all
came here and gas. There's like a lot of things that come here and gas off.
Yep.
We go.
Yep.
Not just us.
Yeah, right.
Okay. If I add biochar, earthshine, grow green biologics to a badly made Bokashi, would that help fix it, or should I dry it out and start over?
Potentially. The mineral microbe relationship is so close, and it could reverse some things if it's not going favorable. But it depends how bad it is. But that would definitely be one way I would remedy a Bokashi. I'm not quite sure about adding in the minerals. And then the other way, of course, would be adding in the biochar. So if you did both of them together, you're probably going to feel more comfortable about that Bokashi anyways.
Another trick you could use is quicklime.
Yep.
Quicklime will lock up a lot of the gases or the VOCs that are coming off of it, and should raise the pH to a point where things shut down.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for. We got to get that pH up a little bit.
So for substrates, can you use coffee grounds?
You can. They're definitely more acidic, but they will ferment. Yeah. Not my favorite though. But
there's a better thing.
With it.
Yeah, I think fermentation shuts down at like 3.
Yeah, so that's why sometimes it can dip. It depends the kinds of coffee that they have. You know, how if there's still a lot of residuals in there, you could get locked out of the fermentation. It makes it riskier. That's why I always like to use coffee especially like the grounds with something else. I put that in my wheat bran. I'll put that with my wood chips. But by itself, it's just sometimes can be tricky.
Diversity is better.
Yeah, 100%.
It's all about the diversity.
Yep. Do you have any way to DIY AMF fungi?
Fungi. So with the EM, the yeast that we have in there, the beer yeast feeds the ecto mycorrhizate community pretty well. But with the lager yeast, we're understanding that feeds the endo. So we don't have lager yeast in the EM. I would encourage people that with the EM, throw some lager yeast in there, get a good, trying to get that in there, and then we can then foster both. Since EM is an endophytic relationship, it can perform and do the duties that we require, but by also having specific types of yeast and things, we can encourage that participation even quicker. So yeah, it can and it does, but sometimes it misses. Depends on the plant. Seems like the huckleberries and stuff, we couldn't get it to go, but then we just have a different approach now with the yeast that they have in the EM.
Another good trick is sorghum grass. So go to an area that is relatively undisturbed, plant the sorghum grass, come back 6 months, 3 months later, harvest the grass, and then plant, dig up the root balls, bring it back, plant it, because sorghum is probably the top plant to have a relationship with mycorrhizae. So whenever you plant it in and around mycorrhizae, it will almost always instantly colonize. And then once you've got the colony, you just bring it back. So it's a little bit of a easier DIY to do it that way than what he's talking about. But either way works.
Cool. So on the note of clay, what happens if I add a little red clay to my indoor beds?
You're going to get a little more iron. It's a good thing. Any colored clay, the color is an indication of mineral. So I always tell people stay away from white clays because they're considered primary. So they don't have a lot of mineral association. But if you can get like blue clays, red clays, taupe clays, brown clays, all of those are going to each have different mineral content. Mix them together and you got, an amazing bioavailable level of metals, of nutrients.
Mm-hmm. Diversity. Last question. What's the proper name of quicklime?
Calcitic lime. So there's two primary limes, dolomitic and calcitic. Calcitic is more powerful, but you can't use it in summer heat. That's when you have to use dolomitic. But if you use the term quicklime at any of your local ag stores, they'll know what you're talking about. Wow. Did we actually get through the list?
No, Lisa got one. Lisa's asking about the cocoa core.
Oh, okay. What about cocoa instead of bran? Would that work for a substrate?
I just did that, Lisa. And it's great. So I'm doing that because of the seeds and the cloning that we're doing now. We're making our own mediums. So I wanted to see what would happen if I made the Bokashi that way, and thumbs up.
So even though it didn't have a lot of nitrogen.
Nah, the sugars, everything. I don't know if there's like salts and stuff left behind in there or something,
Oh, so with core, if it's harvested here in the United States or in Mexico, it's all grown in what's called non-brackish water. So you don't get any salt buildup that you do get if you go to Malaysia. Mm-hmm. Where's the other one? What's that island? Sri Lanka. And there's a couple of different producers in the kind of Indio-China area. Those are all grown in what's called brackish water. So they are going to have residual salts.
Okay.
The other thing too is that the way they handle their material over there is they press the shit out of it because they're trucking or shipping it across the ocean. So it's not with cocoa, it's not the weight that's the problem, it's the volume. So the harder they press it, squeeze it together, the more they can fit in each container. And therefore they're getting more product when it gets here because it expands back out. Now, the problem with that is you crush the fiber. And so now the fiber it doesn't have the water storage capacity holding. It doesn't have the benefits of core that has not been overpressed. So I usually recommend, what was the name of that company, Ken? Help me out here. Agro Cocoa. Out here
in Mexico or something.
Yeah, and they're here in California, and they truck it across the country.
Well, I know the dude on ours. They say that they leave it out for 3 monsoons, or is kind of the description for the wash. But I'm thinking like if it's sitting out in the row like that, it's got to be collecting some type of IMO2 from that area, and it gets pressed. So I think that's what the EM must be eating, since it's sitting out there almost decomposing before we get it pressed in the blocks here. But I had great results with the blocks that I had that were supposedly monsoon washed from.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of differences, but yeah.
So, Mr. Villa, any sea salt or dust for critter metabolism in your Bokashi?
Yeah, I would like that C90. The C90 seems like it gets the EM water going strong before I make my Bokashi. So I love using seawaters. And the bioceramics for sure all the time in my mixes. And then here I like to use the basalts, the green basalts. We have a lot of it here in Pacific Northwest. A lot of good paramagnetic properties in there. And the microbes just seem to love it.
Now, is it in a dust or a powder or a flour?
Dust. It's a dust.
Gotcha.
Very fine, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's it for questions, guys. If I missed any questions, I really want to apologize. Trying to keep the conversation and what's in chat can be a little challenging some days.
Yes.
I'm into that. So, dude, I don't know if I have the fucking energy to wind back up again.
Well,
it's Christmas. We'll cut it 5 minutes early for
Christmas. I got you, Leighton. I got you.
Yeah,
did you send him some of your mixture for him to scope?
No, I haven't sent you none. I need to send you some. I'll get your address or somewhere to land at a PO box or something.
Yeah, we gotta fucking get on the emails.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see what you.
It's like, dude, as soon as I get through this podcast on Monday, I'm fucking fried. Like you don't understand how tired I am. It takes me probably 2 hours to get back to feeling normal. And I like make promises like we were supposed to email each other right after last time. And then by the time I wake up Tuesday, I got a million distractions, people calling, I need this, I need that. And so I just space out on this shit. But no, we were supposed to exchange emails and addresses so I can send you some of the stuff I've been making recently and vice versa. You can send me some of your 20-year-old EM so I can scope it. So
yeah, no, right. And dude, we're moving at the speed of light. Exactly what you said, I could relate to. These energies, people should know these shows take so much energy. We give the community, like, we're not holding back nothing, and that takes a lot of energy. So it takes a second to recoup. And by the time we do that, we got like 3 or 4 phone calls that we put on hold for the 4 hours it takes to prep, even just for this little thing.
Dude, I've already got 5.
So it's like, man, big up to you guys for bringing this to everybody. I love the show, especially like on a Monday when Mondays fucking suck anyway, to watch what you guys are doing. It's like, fine, at least the show's on. I'll go home at lunch and smoke and watch the show.
No, I have to make one point, Leighton. Normal? What the hell is that, man?
Right? Yeah.
I've given up on all of that understanding.
Yeah,
it's a miracle.
I want to say Merry Christmas to everybody in the chat as well. Happy holidays. There's so many different people from so many different places around the world. We're not all Christians, so whatever faith you are, I hope you guys have a very happy holiday.
Amen to that. And as always, brother, thank you so much for coming on, sharing for 2 hours. Can't wait to get you on next round. We'll go really deep on the biochar side of things. And Ken, as always, thank you, brother, for all the hard work you do behind the scenes and putting this together and keeping us on the rails. And happy holidays.
Cracking the whip.
Yeah, thank you guys for your time and putting this together.
Amen.
Hey guys, stick around. I'm gonna say goodbye to chat. See you guys next Monday with Case Gilmore. That's gonna be another amazing show. So take care and Merry Christmas.